What's going on, guys? It's Justin here with Summit Racing and Andrew Markel of Tomorrow's Technician, and we're back for another live stream. We've done a whole bunch of these, and today is going to be, I think, my favorite subject, and that is building your first tool set without going broke. So, this is going to be a very fun one to talk about, Andrew.
You know what? My whole career, I think I've made probably some great buys and some big mistakes when it comes to filling up my toolbox. And, there's certain things that I wish I knew when I first started about tools and sort of pass it on to make sure that, I could walk in on my first day on the job and just make sure that I had what I needed.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. As, I've a young technician, when I was still wet behind the ears and I was learning the ways of the shop, I did what most of us do, and I went and I spent a bunch of money on a bunch of stuff that I didn't need, or I could have made my dollar go farther. And that's what we want to talk a lot about today, is making your dollar go the farthest it can and getting you guys the widest, best selection of tools you can for not a whole lot of money. And there's a couple ways to do that. You don't need a bunch of fancy, shiny, expensive stuff to do the job. My grandfather always said that the mechanic makes the tools, and I've tried to live by that, and it hasn't done me wrong this far. So let's talk about your bare essentials. Like what are your the nitty gritty of what you absolutely need, and that's wrenches, sockets, and ratchets. Those are going to be the base. And even before that, I should say, kind of, you need a toolbox. You're going to need somewhere to keep all this stuff. So a lot of it starts out, there's a lot of different wrenches out in the world. You have just like conventional wrenches like we have right here with our Summit Racing, actually private label wrenches. If you haven't picked a set of these up yet, I highly recommend it. They're a good quality, it's a good quality value. Black is in right now. It's not a chrome tools, or, you're not getting polished or brushed. A lot of guys are going with this cool black matte finish. So these are a nice, comfortable wrench. They come in metric and SAE and standard wrenches, and they even have a ratcheting wrench option, which those, I picked a set of those up for my work box and my at-home box, and I absolutely love them. That's kind of another fun thing, when you're a tech and you're working out of a shop, and you do a little work out of your home as well, you're going to notice that you're going to need two toolboxes, because dragging stuff for a while, in the early times, you can drag stuff back and forth. I still do it to this day. There's still stuff I keep at work that I never use at home, and on the other hand, there's stuff I use at home all the time that I have to take to work too. So,
and really look at what your budget is and what you're buying. And with these sets of wrenches and also these set of sockets here, is look for sets that aren't missing certain sizes. It's like you'll run across certain socket sets that may be missing a 16, or they end before 19, or there's, the classic one is the 15 millimeter. I mean, there's certain ones in there that you'll use on certain ones.
15, 11, 16, 20 is a really common missing size that you don't see a lot.
This one has it.
And that's what I like. Same deal. I like socket sets that have, are complete. But then there's also, once you're going to have a couple different grades of socket. So you're going to have impact sockets. And I will be the first to say an impact socket is an impact socket. You can, and when I say name brand, we have your regular consumer grade tools. We have our truck grade, professional grade tools. And then you have some stuff that's even more disposable on that end of, budget big store tools.
I mean, the important thing to remember, the difference between an impact and a normal socket, it's a little bit of the sizing. I mean, if you look at, a 17 millimeter impact, it's a lot more beefier than this. And it's also the clearance too around the opening. And that's sort of the advantage of buying some of these higher quality tools, is the walls. They're actually a little bit thinner, so you can get in some tighter confines underneath the hood. And then also, it comes down to the quality of the finish and completing your set.
Yeah. And and another big place I like to look for tools, I'm a big auction, yard sale. I've done like weird, and when you become a mechanic and you start to get a little more established, you'll be working on cars and doing some stuff, side work for people, and be like, oh, my dad was a mechanic, or my brother, they left some tools at my house. I've got tons of tools like that, doing something for somebody like, I don't exactly have all the money, but I have some money and this, toolbox, and you might get some good scores.
Yeah, it's, those auctions, like the one that we probably go to is Kiko Auctions around here. But yeah, those auctions are good, tool sales are good, secondhand stuff, even pawn shops.
Yep.
But, the thing to consider too is also the warranty issue.
Yes, that is that. So with a lot of these like high name brand tools, you're going to get a warranty with your Snap-on, Matco. There's a whole, Mac. There's a whole slew of them. Gear Wrench even has tool trucks now, which I think is pretty cool. But with those, like, with having a truck, if you're going to be a tech in a shop, you're going to have trucks that come to the shop every week, and you have something that breaks, the truck's there every week to fix it, versus getting something kind of from a big box store, buying something secondhand. That warranty convenience isn't always going to be there. That's also another thing, tool trucks are great because they come every week, and if you need something, you make a call, you have a great warranty. But a lot of those guys also have, secondhand bins, trade-in, you get great deals on repos. Because when somebody can't pay their bills and they get their tools or their box repoed, you can get a screaming deal if you keep some cash around.
Let's talk about credit.
Yes,
We've probably
yes.
both made this mistake of going into debt to the tool truck, and I just barely caught a tool truck driver taking my toolbox almost out of the shop because I hadn't paid him a couple weeks, and I became really good at avoiding the guy. But, that debt, it does add up, and they collect it every week. It may not sound like much every week, but into the month, into the year, it does add up.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's, I remember being a young technician and I was buying off 2 or 3 different tool trucks a week. So there'd be weeks where I had $300-400 going out in tool payments. So, it's not, you're investing in yourself week to week up front. It's not like going to, you might go to a trade school or something like that, but generally with that, you're going to get a loan, you're going to go to school and then pay the money back. Versus being a mechanic, you kind of need the tools right now. Now, let's talk a little bit about those high-end, high-dollar specialty tools, like your big scanners, like
Autel, Launch.
Yeah, big expensive stuff that, 5, 6, 10,000 AC recovery machines. Now it is nice, and in the current times, a lot of shops provide that stuff. But if you're going to go out on your own or be a mobile technician or that, you might have to pony up and spend some of those big dollar items yourself.
This is a classic example right here. This one, it's a Fluke 87. I think I paid close to $400 for this with a couple sets of leads. And it's worked well. It's lasted a long time. But the odd thing about it is, this is one I bought from Summit Racing, God, I want to say 7, 8 years ago. And it's made by Actron. I think Bosch is now has a branded version of this at Summit. And it's a great tool because it's under the $30 range, I would say.
Yeah, no, they're cheap.
But this one's automotive, and you can even do tack and dwell on it, which I actually use this quite a bit for versus something like this. But that's an example of those high-dollar tools. I mean, Fluke is used by electricians, it's used by top techs, but you may not need the capabilities of this when you could use something like this. And just knowing what the tool is. I mean, with this, you've got RMS, which is root mean square. It takes an average of the voltage reading. So you don't see, this thing will hop around a lot more, coming up with the average. This one will probably stay and average it out, and you can read it a lot more accurately.
Yeah, so you get those different bells and whistles all about what you want to spend. And it also depends on what you do a lot. If you're doing you're working on equipment all the time, doing electrical diagnosis, electrical tools might be something you want to invest more in versus the guy that's just doing oil changes, brakes, and, general vehicle repair. It does depend on a lot about the field you're entering. So, automotive, you're going to need a lot more light-duty general tools. If you pick a more specialized industry like, aircrafts, boats, planes, trains, and automobiles,
Yep.
your tool sets are obviously going to change. Now, let's talk about flat rate, being a flat rate tool or tech where time is money. So in that aspect, you're going to want to invest in some stuff that makes you faster. So, your cordless impacts, which I think everybody should have, in the modern times of 2023, everybody should have cordless tools. Like air tools are great to start out with and cheap initial investment, but man, does the cordless stuff like the Milwaukee tools, it makes a big difference and really will change your life. But yeah, if you're a flat rate technician and you only get 30 minutes paid for a job, you need to be able to do it in 20 so you can make some money.
I mean, even if these technicians are coming out of school and you're going to either a dealership or you're going to a place where you're doing a lot of maintenance in the fast lane at some dealerships, how fast you can check the inflation on a tire. And that's where a tool like this, I spent a ridiculous amount of money. Not ridiculous. I think this was actually in the $40 range.
Yeah, like I said, I know they're like mid-price, but when it comes to tire gauges, you definitely get what you pay for. I highly recommend investing some money in a good tire gauge. Like, look how big that thing is, and it's kind of cool. Obviously, we can't turn the lights off and show you guys, but that big old dial on there glows. So, I have one of those. I have the low-pressure version that I, keep in my off-road rig. And if you check your tire pressure in the middle of the night, that big old dial's glowing. It's really convenient.
And, with, being a fast lane service, you're going to need sockets, you're going to need wrenches. What else should that technician have in their box?
Yeah, so like your fast lane guy, you need your oil filter wrenches, oil filter socket for some of those ones, cartridge style filters, real basics, screwdrivers, your basic metric, SAE and metric tools. Nothing too crazy. You're not going to be doing a wheel bearing in the maintenance line, so you're probably not going to need a 1/2-inch impact. But, a 3/8 light duty impact, very possible if you have to do a headlight change or something like, something minor like that, even doing an oil change. So you're definitely going to need lots. I have a little glove storage and, safety glasses on the side of my toolbox. PPE is important.
And that's another thing students need to be aware of is PPE may be the student's responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, you might have to, PPE in a lot of these shops, there might be a glove that you like more or is a higher quality, and you might have to spend $40 on a box of gloves. There's a couple hundred in there, but you're investing in yourself, and that's the key here. And that's what I like about tools and kind of like the trades is, I'm buying my own tools. This is all my own stuff. I'm building my own arsenal to make my job easier. If you're not, the beautiful thing about that is if you're not happy or you don't like what you got going on, you pack up all your own tools and you leave and you go find somewhere else to work and, pick something different. And that's the cool part is, you take your livelihood with you.
And that's so important. A lot of the technicians out there, they may get caught up on like the brand names of the tools. Like let's say, I need this brand of this because this guy in the shop has this and that. It doesn't matter too much the brand of the tool, it's the results and what the technician knows.
Yeah, there's, I have the full scale, all the way, Snap-on, Matco, Mac, Cornwell, S&K. There's Performance Tool. There's, there's Hartford Freight stuff, in my box. I buy things that allow me to do the job the most efficiently. If you're doing something like if you're a warranty guy at a dealership and you're doing the same job over 100 times and you have one tool that saves you 10 minutes, in a job, well, I did it 100 times. That's way more billable hours that I'm able to do now. So just it's little stuff like that. Tools, you're doing ball joints all the time. It's worth investing in a high quality ball joint press. Like I bought that. Matco has a cool new deal where instead of like your old traditional OTC C style one,
Yep.
It's like kind of like a clamp like this. Man, it changes the game. You struggle like especially in Mopars, with those Dana straight axle stuff. It's really hard to change that bottom ball joint, especially on some of the new, JLs and JKs. Well, with that new style ball joint press, it totally changes the game and makes it 100 times easier and takes about 20 minutes off the job per side.
Well, speaking about OTC, they have, if you're a fast lane tech doing brake jobs, the one tool from OTC is their brake rotor remover. Basically, it's two arms that go around there and it drives off the rotor this way. This saves you from having to wail away with a hammer trying to remove that rotor. But yeah, those presses can just clamp around the rotor, put it on the thing, it pops off, and it's almost like magic.
See, I love tools like that. That just, like I said, it just makes the job easier. So, and that's, working smarter is that's what you want to do. That's going to make you a better, more efficient tech every time. Now, Andrew, when it comes to, I have my big main toolbox, and then I have some side hutches on that thing that have more specialty tools in it. But then I have a tool cart as well, which I believe the tool cart thing is slept on, and a lot more guys should set a tool cart up and kind of, that is I use this every day, all day. I can take it right over to the lift and work on it. So let's talk a little bit about setting up a tool cart and kind of what you can do there. There's a lot starting out. I know a lot of guys that wrench just out of a tool cart and are really smart and savvy on how they pack their stuff in the box. Because toolbox organization, we could talk about that for 3 hours. There's a whole, we'll touch on it a little bit here in a minute, but that's another, key important thing is you can have all the tools in the world, but if you can't find it, you're kind of sitting high and dry. But yeah, so tool carts, my tool cart that's my Excalibur. That's what has the big sword hanging out of it.
Yep.
Everything I should need is right inside it.
And, I've got a tool cart out there, and it's organized with certain racks for metric, standard. It has 1/4 inch, 3/8, and select 1/2 inch. It also has a collection of screwdrivers in the side too, but that wheels around the shop because there's no way I'm going to roll that toolbox around all the time.
No, and that's nice because that's 10, 12 tools that I don't want to have to carry in my hands all the time. I just grab my tool cart and I go roll in the cart. It's got my speakers in the top of there, so if I'm trying to listen to tunes, zip ties, that kind of stuff, a couple straps for hanging brake calipers. It's all the stuff that you need all the time for your most common jobs.
Hey, Jack Stowe, how you doing from Kansas City? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's always fun to have people tune into these things because this is a very fun subject. There's a ton of people that are going to identify with this, and that is the one thing is we're all kind of car guys and techs. We all, no matter what your brand affiliation is, Ford, Chevy, or if you're an import guy, or maybe even a Mopar guy, we all have tools, and we all share that that common interest and addiction.
But we all have our own philosophy when it comes to tools and what stuff we do buy, what we don't buy. It's like my philosophy is on Torx sockets. Make sure you've got the highest quality possible out there. And this is an OTC socket, T40. I've used this multiple times. This is a common thing on FCA vehicles. But this thing has, it's put up a fight. It's twisted a little bit, but did it round out the socket? Nope.
Yeah, and good quality tools are important because, it's cool to have a cheap tool and you can go warranty it, but when you break it 7 times and you've drove back and forth, so there is stuff like that you're going to want, like Allen sockets. I spent a little money on those because I don't want to wear them out, and I want the best chance of getting Allen fasteners out.
So what's your screwdriver philosophy?
Ooh, so you should use a screwdriver in the proper ways. I do own a set of screwdrivers that said on the package, striking screwdrivers. So I take that as you can use it as a chisel or a punch or whatever you see fit. But I have an expensive set of screwdrivers, and then I will buy kind of what I call sacrificial screwdrivers. These screwdrivers are great quality, but they're also priced really well. So this is what I have a set of screwdrivers that cost a couple $100, but I use them all the time.
Yeah.
So I would refer to this as a set of sacrificial screwdrivers in the aspect if I need to grind on it, weld something to it, chop it to make it shorter, I don't feel bad because it's not a couple $100 screwdriver.
Well, and then plus with these, you got the added utility, you can get a little bit extra leverage.
Yeah.
Screwdriver sets are, I look at, what I use and, I've made a pretty good investment. Phillips, Posi, that's another.
Posi important, yeah.
You've got to have that in your toolbox, especially with some of the Asian vehicles, because if you just use a regular screwdriver, a Phillips, there's a chance that you could round out that head pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's what the Japanese industrial, I didn't know that existed for the longest time, and then bought a set of Japanese actual screwdrivers, JIS, I think it's Japanese industrial standard, Japanese industrial system. Maybe, I know it's something of that nature, I'm probably getting it wrong, but the quality of screwdriver, you're like, oh, everything's just a number 2 Phillips on this stuff. No, it's a fancy Japanese size, and you can tell the difference. They have cool little serrated edges and everything on them.
And this one actually has them in there, the bits.
That's amazing. I love it. Summit does a great job with their private label tools of bringing us the stuff we're actually going to use and need, like these screwdriver sets that. Andrew has those sockets over there sitting in front of him. We have those in a full offering from 1/4 inch all the way up to 1/2 inch drive, and just about every size you can think of.
Shout out to Mike McCord here. He is wondering if this will be available as a podcast. This will actually be on YouTube after we finish this up. So we can use that in your classroom. And also shout out to Frederick Bernhardt from Norfolk Aggie. Says hello. Hey, how's it going?
Heck yeah, nice to see you guys today. Now, you can see kind of sitting out in front of here, we have a couple of these blow mold cases. And so there's an extractor set sitting there. And that's always a daunting investment because that's something you buy for worst case scenarios. And when you figure out how to use it and you can use it efficiently, man, that'll save your butt in some situations. It's, between broken bolts, especially I noticed a lot doing exhaust manifolds and that kind of stuff. That's always where I'm breaking bolts and studs.
Another thing they need to get is a set of thread chasers, both for metric and standard sizes. Those ones I keep in my box. It's not as severe as a tap and die. So you put it in there, it cleans up the threads a little bit, removes some of the debris, and that way, let's say it's a drain plug for an oil pan going back in there. I mean, that's going to make it a little bit more easier to do, and make sure that, that drain plug stays in there. But yeah, the extractors, taps and dies, maybe a little bit later, but the thread chasers and extractors and those tools, when you make a mistake, and you will, they can save your butt and save time.
Yeah. One of Summit Racing actually has their own private label thread chaser set. Highly recommend it. You guys should check it out. But another company that makes one that I absolutely love is Lang Tool. Lang actually makes a cool bunch of fun accessory tools and kind of things you don't think about you'll ever need. Like they have a whole thread file set, those plastic pliers for your rubber hoses and stuff like that. Love those so you're not getting covered in coolant. Yeah, this is kind of a large can of worms to open, but, the key is making your guys' money go far, the farthest you possibly can. Either looking for sales, not buying new stuff. You can put together a really wicked set of tools for, not a whole lot of money. You don't have to spend all the dollars in the world. It is fun to have, a shop full of 5 or 6 guys, and it is a big contest who has the biggest, shiniest box. But you'll get there one day, Rome wasn't built in a day. I always like to joke around and say it took at least 2.5 weeks. So, it's been I started buying tools around the age of like 15, 16. I was like starting to assemble my own like real box to do work. I'm 28 now and I'm still buying stuff. I still don't have all the tools in the world. But one day, I hopefully will.
Yeah, I'm turning 50 this year. I hate to say that, but it's a constant investment in yourself. You'll see something new, something different. You'll be working on a job, and you'll want to buy that tool for that problem that you're encountering. It was like these ones right here. These are the female-style eTorx sockets. And I ran into I think it was a 2019 Jeep Grand Cherokee, where you needed a 20 or a 22. And the set that I had bought initially, a pretty good quality set, it ended at 19. So, that's how you fill out the set.
Yeah, it is extremely inconvenient. Now, one of I have a set of sockets similar to that, but they're actually wobble, and they're perfect because I use them all the time to pull apart G56 transmission cases.
Okay.
And it's nice because it has that female Torx fastener on there, but they have that nice little wobble so you can throw it on an impact and just buzz them all out and get your transmission case all pulled apart.
Yeah, those specialty sockets, Torx, female Torx, triple squares, those are things to pick up later on for your tool collection. That way you can completely fill it out.
But now if you're like a Volkswagen technician, like that's what you're going to be doing, like you're going to be a Volkswagen tech, triple square is going to be one of the first things you buy.
Oh, God, yeah.
It just really depends what you're working on. A lot of you guys are going to end up, at mom and pop repair shops, that kind of deal, or you can end up in a dealership. It's you're going to have to build your set of tools to your environment a little bit. But that is the fun part, is it's an extension of you and is completely customizable.
And another thing to buy, and I know that Summit Race has this, I think it's done by Lang or some other companies too, it's the fractional size lug nut sockets. So it's a 19.5 or a 21.5 socket. If you're doing a lot of tire rotations and you're dealing with either Ford, Chrysler, I think there's even some other ones from some of the foreign manufacturers of the swelled up lug nut, total lifesaver.
Yeah, the half-size lug nut sockets, I use those all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've worked on a Dodge or a Ford, and I am saying so many not nice things because it has some swelled up lug nuts. Kind of also to touch on what Andrew said, if you're a wheel and tire guy, picking up a set of Torx sticks is, might be worth it. Now, I don't know how true it is and if there's different sets, but from what I've been told is you're not actually able to use torque sticks on an electric impact because of how the power is different than, your regular air impact. So that's something to think about. If you're doing wheels and tires all the time too, you're also going to need a good quality torque wrench to chuck those lugs to make sure, oh, Andrew's got the big behemoth there. You're going to need, depending on what you're doing, you may not need a torque wrench that big, but man, is it fun to have one that big.
Yeah, the torque wrench is critical. For your kit, this was, I think, $200 at Summit Racing. I'll have to check my Speed Perks account or whatever it is. And but this was actually used for a job that was a Ford F-150 electric power steering rack. I think 325 foot-pounds, so we needed this, and it was a torque angle too. But have I used it since then on other things? I think I've used it on one axle nut. That's about it.
You were working on your watch.
Yeah, I mean this is quite the
that's a big hefty tool, and you need kind of some big hefty storage for that.
But some advice on torque wrenches: get it calibrated.
Oh, 100%. I have mine, I have a whole assortment of torque wrenches for all the way from 1/4 inch to, a big guy like that. And I even have, a torque multiplier for doing real big, heinous, heavy equipment stuff. And I like to have those checked and calibrated about once a year because of the frequency I use them in.
And especially if you're in that fast lane service again, and you're dealing with a torque wrench, make sure that that's calibrated, it's used properly. Because if you're dealing with a click style, you can drop this, you can dislodge the pivot block inside, and then, or you may just wear it out because these things are actually designed for 4,000 cycles, clicks and unclicks, because that little tiny pivot block inside wears out on one side. And a top tip, I heard this from a technician, you tighten it down a certain way, and then you try to do it in reverse. And the issue is your wrench will be going forward won't be accurate, but going in reverse it will be because of the wear to the pivot block.
Interesting. That's owned I've been a bend to beam guy. I was a click style for a long time. I've kind of moved into the digital wrench age,
Yes.
which excuse me. Digital wrenches are amazing, especially in the days of, everything. A lot of stuff is torque to yield or dependent on angle. So we need to have something so you don't have to pull out this giant dial wheel and sit there and angle a whole set of torque head bolts.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver, some of those digital ones. But yeah, I mean, for that philosophy with a torque wrench, I mean, you got to take care of it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and that's another thing is taking care of your tools. Like I said, you're investing in these. These are what make you a living. So being nice to them and cleaning them and putting them away is, that's kind of a thank you to your tool set, and you're going to thank yourself in the long run. Because there is nothing worse than getting, that's one of my pet peeves is if I have somebody come over, use my tools or that kind of deal, and I go to get back in my box and I pull the ratchet out and it's greasy, just make a pile of whatever you use and I'll clean it and put it away. There's a certain way to do it, so.
I worked with a technician from Romania, and his name was Mikey. I'll remember this to this day. But every time he would finish a job, before he took the car for a test drive or everything, he spent the time to clean up his tools. And I thought, that's kind of an inefficient way to spend your time and get the car out, get it back. And his thing was, well, if I keep my tools clean, my hands are going to be cleaner. And he took good care of his tools. And, to that day of him wiping down his tools after he's completed a job, it kind of reminded me of, you've got to take care of your tools.
Yeah, and that's like a big thing, especially when you're, I do hourly work or that kind of deal. I have a full billable hour that's of me cleaning tools and sweeping up my bay, because that, I did your job, pulled your vehicle out, it's complete. Now I need to reset to get ready for the next job, because why should the next person have to pay for, get kind of, I know that's kind of a lot of people have mixed feelings about that, but I want a brand new, clean, ready, I know where everything is, work area for every job I do to make me the best tech possible. That's the last thing I want to do is that last job of the day and you've pulled out 3/4 of your toolbox and there's tools everywhere and you're looking for that 10mm socket and you're just like, it was here a minute ago and you're just looking around. Well, you took the time that at just 1 extra hour to put all that stuff away and clean up, you're not going to have that problem.
Couple shout outs here. We got Matthew and the boys at Norfolk Aggie. Say what's up. Steve Walter from Springfield Clark. CTC Auto Service class in Springfield, Ohio. Awesome.
Heck yeah, we appreciate you guys joining us. It's a lot of fun to have some people watching.
And then shout out to Braden O'Brien from Norfolk Aggie. Represent.
Very fun.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I would say, I'm a product of of an ag program. Shout out to the Wayne County Schools Career Center. I'm graduated from there in their 2013 ag mechanics program. So, but that's what I was already dabbling kind of with mechanical stuff at that point. My dad was a mechanic. My grandfather, my uncle. It's a very family thing. And going into ag was a big thing for me in high school. It truly let me know that this is the industry that I want to pursue. Now, I don't really work on tractors and do that kind of stuff in my day-to-day, in my 9-to-5 job anymore. But outside of work, that's my passion. I enjoy ag equipment, semis, that kind of. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it makes noise, I'm really interested in it. I'm broad, but. Yeah, no, going through a vocational program and even building a box there, that was so much fun. Those 2 years of vocational school and, that kind of deal was neat because everybody started with the same tool set. And by the end of the deal, to see who had what left in their box or who had grown their collection or, this box looks like it just rolled out of the dealership and this one looks like it just rolled down 3 flights of stairs. That was a lot of fun, and that was like the first dabble in building. My box, it was all Craftsman stuff. I joke around. We all remember that first Christmas where mine was the Octagon Craftsman kit.
Oh wow!
But I remember getting that for Christmas and being so excited and just ready to take stuff apart and make it not work again. And I swear my parents had to buy a new weed whacker for 4 or 5 years in a row because Justin's just over here taking the stuff apart, seeing how it's going to work. And parents and moms and aunts and uncles make mechanics every Christmas with a Craftsman kit or a tool kit, and that's what sparks the interest. Then you're fixing bikes around the neighborhood, and then next thing you know, you're building race cars.
That's probably the best thing, is the ability to help other people out with your tools. And it's amazing what looking back, after 20 years, what's sitting around there, your toolbox, and it's memories almost with a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, that's a thing, kind of as more, this does kind of sound a little morbid, but, we all have that tool in our toolbox once we get established. It is our junk drawer or junk tray or whatever you want to call it. So, I spend a lot of time at auctions, and, some of the auctions I go to, unfortunately, are, mechanics that have passed away, and it's their family selling off their big collection of tools. And, I always like to buy the junk tray out of their toolbox because that tray is a random collection of things that was very important to them in some very random moments. So, the last one I bought had a lifetime supply of GM starter shims in it.
Nice.
And, something, most guys don't even, a lot of guys, unless you're working on the pre-99 stuff, don't, shimming a starter on a GM truck's not really a thing anymore. But, a lot of that old stuff, it needs at least one shim.
Definitely.
Or at least 7.
Because that flywheel wears out after a while.
Yeah.
Question coming in, what hammers should a technician starting out have in their tool cart?
So you're gonna need a BFG, a big frickin' hammer for moving stuff that doesn't like to move. I would recommend getting a dead blow, a soft face dead blow, like that one Andrew's kind of showing right now. They do have hard face dead blows, but the soft one, so you're not. I'm a lead hammer guy, so I actually poured my own lead hammer and got a handle and did that kind of deal because it's important. A lot of times you used to be able to get lead hammers. It was an easy tool to come by because guys that had knockoff wheels,
Yep,
you would see them all the time. Now, not so much. So getting a lead hammer is a little bit more of a task. I have a good quality wood mallet in my box as well.
Yep.
It's actually covered with leather. That's another good thing. It pays off to have a leather bag or two in the bottom of your box for kind of beating on stuff. But yeah, you're definitely going to need a big, a good 2, 3, 4 pound sludge. It all depends what you're working on. You might need a 10, 12 pound sludge if you're working on heavy equipment, doing real rowdy stuff. But yeah, that nice little 3, 4 pound handheld guy, and then a decent size. I don't want to see a framing hammer in your mechanic's toolbox. It's always funny when I ask a buddy for a hammer, and they're like, yeah, I got this, and they whip out Granddad's framing hammer, and you're just like, no, I need a real hammer.
Yeah, that's the prize hammer I actually have a hammer drawer in my box.
Same.
And it's got the copper hammer. that has, and I've used it for close to probably 30 years now. It's nice and mushroomed out, and it looks good.
Yeah, I have a piece of like copper pipe that I've filled with lead, and then you beat, it's you beat on it for a while, and then the pipe starts to split. So then you cut a piece of the pipe off, and it's you're going to end up also being a mechanic. There's going to end up a whole section of your toolbox of tools that you've built for certain situations, and you save them and you brag. That's like a brag. It's like a right of bragging. You're like, oh, hand it to your buddy, and you're like, I bet you can't guess what this is for. Like kind of like one of the big laughing in my toolbox is the if you're working on Harley Davidsons, there's a big giant primary nut, and it has a big shaft that hangs out, and it's a really big expensive socket. So I have a socket that's cut in half, and then I just weld it in a piece of pipe, but it works on all sorts of kind of stuff. It's actually the same size as Volkswagen air-cooled flywheel nut, because those just have one nut on the flywheel. Like you don't have like 6 flywheel bolts. You have a set of dowel pins and just one giant honking nut and a washer. There's a washer there too. But yeah, so I have that giant socket, and I've only ever used it probably 5-6 times. But man, it's paid. That's a $10 socket and a $2 piece of pipe, and it's a $500 socket if you buy one. So I think it's paid for itself at this point. That's another thing is there's special so tools like that, specialty tools. Line wrenches, I always if you're doing brake jobs, all that kind of stuff, I recommend that's a big investment, and you should buy metric and standard line wrenches. I feel the same way. They have regular ones for brake lines. They also have offset ones for hydraulic stuff. So a hydraulic set of wrenches is good too. Brake flare tool.
Definitely.
Depending, if you're just doing home jobs, have your little hand manual flaring tool. I spent all the dollars and bought the hydraulic deal. If you're doing brake lines once a week, if you're doing them all the time, you're working in a shop, general repair facility, and you're doing brake lines all the time, or fuel lines, transmission lines, any hard line that it be, that tool will save your forearms and save you a bunch of time and make you a whole lot of money.
And the nice thing about those tools too is they have ones that are configured so you can actually flare the hose on the line on the car, instead of having to pull it up, put it on a bench, put it in a vise, and it makes it a little bit more easier. And those hydraulic ones.
Yeah, the hydraulic one is slick. But that's the thing is, I keep preaching it, and I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face, but time is money when you're a tech. And the more billable hours you can get, it's going to be better for you. And, put a little more money in your top pocket so you can buy some more fancy tools or, buy some go fast car parts.
That's true. So in terms of, okay, we've got the screwdrivers covered. We've got the sockets. We've got the wrenches covered. We got the hammers covered. What other things should they have in their toolbox, like lighting?
So lighting is a big, important thing. I'm a big headlamp guy. Milwaukee has a great offering of headlamps. I love their headlamps, lights. They have an underhood light that's absolutely phenomenal. Actually, Summit Racing has a private label underhood light that I like a lot and I use all the time. But yeah, lighting is going to be important because there's going to be some spots and situations you have to work in where lighting, regular shop lighting isn't going to cut it. So when it comes to, we're all going to buy cordless tools at some point. If you can swing it in the initial investment, but buy what you have. If you don't have anything, I recommend starting out with Milwaukee. That's my personal favorite. But they have I don't think it's actually 500 tools, but they have 300 different tools that you can hook up to a Milwaukee M18 or M12 battery. So, and you can have lights, impacts, tire inflators, kind of anything you can think of. So lighting is very important. What about kind of those little odds and end tools like a coolant pressure tester?
Exactly. Or even a compression tester. You may need this to do some early evaluation stuff. And, this may be, 6 months out of the thing, but, this has been a great investment for me as far as, knowing, compression and doing testing and everything else. I mean, this tool, it'll probably last you a lifetime. I mean, yeah. I bought a cheaper one that I kind of regretted that didn't last that long.
Yeah, and that's the thing is a lot of these are an investment. A lot of these tools you're going to have until you're 70 years old. So, there's stuff that my dad bought when he was, 18, 19 years old, or my grandfather had bought when he was 18, 19 years old, and still has it to this day. That's another thing, I think it'd be fun to touch on with, these tools and kind of, having it all in your toolbox is storing it. And you're going to organize all this stuff in a certain way that makes the most sense to you. Like, I'm a sockets in the top of the box kind of guy. There's some guys that like to put them in drawers, but all my sockets, whether it be from my 1/4-inch guy all the way up to my 3/4-inch drive stuff, is all in the main top of my toolbox, so I can see them all right there in all their glory.
And that brings up another point about toolboxes and getting a high quality one, because I made the mistake of getting this toolbox, and it had it was the wider 40-inch wide one. Wasn't the best quality, but I sat there and I stacked in all my 1/2-inch, 3/8, 1/4-inch extensions on that top drawer, and I think within probably a week and a half, it's like tilted down and everything else. So that's sort of the advantage of buying a higher quality toolbox, is it can handle those capacities, it can hold more, it's a little bit better constructed, it's going to last a little bit longer for you.
Yeah, no, we all want to go out and buy that giant, Maximizer or Snap-on Classic 98, or, get real crazy, go buy that giant Snap-on Mr. Big. It's quite the daunting investment. It makes my skin crawl. But, you can work up to that. Like, I bought a box pretty early on, which I will say as an adult now I regret, because that put me in there were some weeks I was eating ramen noodles so I could make a tool payment, and it was a little daunting. But now, it's paid for, and that's an investment, and I'll have that thing, my tools have been through it all. I've moved with my tools. They've been through girlfriends, jobs, different places, all different states of my life, but I'll always have them. I'll never get rid of them, because no matter what, that tool collection that, you take time to build and invest can always make you money. You can always go somewhere and wrench. You might not be wrenching in your 40s and still have your tools, and you might just be working at home. But then you could, something could change, and you might have to start wrenching again. So, by taking the time and money and investing in this stuff, you're building a future for yourself.
Question just came in. For air tools for a starting out technician, what should be inside the toolbox?
So I recommend. I like an air ratchet. Air ratchet's one of my favorite tools. You're going to need that IRC, that high torque silver impact. I can't remember the number. It's 2 something. Another good one we always like to use is that Harbor Freight Earthquake. You need the black one, not the red one, though. The black one's the good one. The red one's not the good one. But yeah, so you're definitely going to need a big 1/2-inch air impact. I like the Air Hammer is like one of my go-to favorite tools. So we're up here in the Rust Belt, so we see junky weather six months out of the year. So snow, sleet, ice, salt, beet juice, real nasty, crusty, rusty cars around here. So the Air Hammer is our friend. It does a lot of work for us.
And with those, there's always that small one you see in certain air tool kits. You want to get the one with a longer snout to it that has a little bit more impact.
Yeah, you need the oomph. Like you want the long stroke, the big. You want the big dad.
It's like one YouTuber calls his Big Nasty.
Yes. That's the other thing, is the Air Hammer is the ultimate tool of destruction. You can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time with the Air Hammer. But yeah, definitely the Air Ratchet, 1/2-inch impact, and the Air Hammer are my 3 staple must-have for your toolbox air tools. And I think everything else is just kind of gravy. And Andrew's selection might be different, though.
Well, I've been leaning more towards the composite plastic body 1/2-inch impacts lately, and I've got a few that I've tried out lately. And the most amazing thing that I've kind of noticed is, compared to some of my older stuff, which I bought 25, 30 years ago, it's a lot quieter now.
Oh, the noise, the weight, flipping around that big aluminum impact all day long, that can be a lot. And, that's a big thing about all this, is working smarter, not harder. Another investment in your tool station and your work area can be foam mats. I have a foam mat in front of my toolbox, in front of my workbench. My creeper, I spent a bunch of money on a really good creeper, because if you're going to lay on it and I'm going to be on it for 6-7 hours a day, I want to be comfortable.
I mean, with a lot of these impacts, it's just, sound inside the shop, so always invest in earplugs, because you'll get to my age and you're missing certain bands of your hearing, and certain, high pitches come through and low stuff doesn't go through. Make sure that you're taking care of your ear. Because now a lot of them have mufflers on there. I think my old CP 1/2-inch, it vents up and out like this.
Right in your face,
yeah. So that's a big thing. And, guys sort of associate, okay, I should get the most powerful impact possible, but then you start to get this impact and it's unmanageable.
Yep, yeah, it's not, it's not breaking loose bolts, it's just breaking bolts, and that's the problem. You want something, you don't need something too big for your britches. If I'm just pulling out 3/8 bolts, I don't need a 1/2 inch impact.
And some of these 1/2 inch impacts, they're getting a lot more compact.
Yeah, the compact thing is cool. You can get them into all sorts of crazy places now.
I mean, like, okay, Honda, crank bolt.
Yes.
Classic example.
We all need that dreaded, that giant, the flywheel socket.
Yep. I mean, that's, start looking at that and the capacity of it and, balance it out for what your needs are and try them out. Because, lugging a heavy impact wrench could be, kind of difficult for a while. Question coming in, what about electrical testing tools? What should a introductory technician have in his box for replacing bulbs and so forth?
So your go-to basic, what you're going to need is your good old genuine American Testolite. So like Andrew actually has an OTC one over here. That's going to do, I would say 90% of your electrical diagnosis if you use that tool correctly. Like our grandfathers were diagnosing, the Saturn V rocket with one of those. So
Exactly. And another tip with these, if you want to get a set of vice grips, replace this little tiny clamp with a set of vice grips, and that will help definitely on rusty cars to find a good ground.
Yes. So, you have to have that, and not so much anymore. I'm a node light guy, so like us, much more in your 90s, 80s vehicles, that early fuel injection, OBD1 stuff, node lights there's still certain situations where you can use them and they're very important, but that's something that's a staple in my box, not so much anymore, but I see a lot of that early 90s Honda stuff, nodes are important. So, but staple for 2023 technician, dude, I'm going to say the multimeter and if you're trying to get real fancy, Power Probe, man. Power Probe is one of the Power Probe 3, and I actually think they have a Power Probe 4 now. One of my go-to favorite, use it all the time. Once you understand, sit down, read the book, understand how to use that tool. That thing has so many bells and whistles and little deals built into it. It's really efficient and will really change how you do electrical diagnosis.
The latest one from Power Probe, I think it's the 4, the little tiny screen in back. You can actually look at pulse width modulated signals, and it will give you the duty cycle of what's going on.
So that means you can check injectors, crank sensors, like that. That changes, especially in modern day CAN bus wiring and a lot of this stuff becoming more difficult. Like being able to look and pinpoint stuff like that with just one electrical tool versus rolling out of my picoscope and doing all this other deal is it's kind of indispensable. Another thing I like in the toolbox, electrical, so much not so much a electrical diagnosis tool, but something battery powered that I like to use, heat gun.
Yes.
Heat gun is a staple in my box. I use it all the time.
And also, mine is the little tiny blowtorch. Mine's actually made by Power Probe, but I think it's one of the chef ones where they do creme brulee with.
Yeah, but you're definitely if you're doing electrical stuff, you're going to need a good soldering iron, a heat gun, electrical repair stuff, some extra wire. I would grab, miscellaneous relays and that kind of stuff just for checking double checking systems and doing that kind of stuff. Some resettable breaker style fuses for electrical stuff. Real basic. You can do a lot of stuff with, electrical diagnosis without a lot of investment in fancy tools.
Shout out to Mike McCord at Tennessee College of Applied Technology in Whiteville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, heck yeah. I hope you guys are having that nice Tennessee weather like we're having here in Ohio right now.
But the diagnosing, you'll be in the fast lane or doing that, the Testolite's nice. It can determine, if there's power at the circuit, but, you're going to need a voltmeter. Let's say it's a headlight socket that is dropping voltage across it due to corrosion or other stuff inside. You're going to need to verify the voltage levels, so that's where you need a meter and even some of that Power Probe stuff. I'm a big fan of those too.
Yeah, it's like I said, that's one of my favorites. I can't say I use mine. When I first bought it, I was using it to about 20% of its capacity, and then you sit down, read the book, or watch the little DVD, and then once you can figure out all the little fun functions and all that, that's like doing wiring harness diagnosis, that kind of stuff. It's bar none one of my favorites.
And the nice thing about electrical tools is you can grow with them and learn with them. Because like here is a, I have a picoscope, but this is a scope, one channel. I can do just about everything the Pico does. It takes me a little bit longer in some ways, but actually a little bit shorter because it's already like booted up right now.
But like, think about how
Yeah.
far that's came compared to, when I first got into wrenching, getting an oscilloscope or a picoscope. It doesn't fit. It barely fits inside this case. Now, a lot of them will fit inside this case now, but before that was not the case.
Yeah.
And it was a whole rolling cabinet, and you had to roll it over, and there was we've came really, really far in tool compactness over the years.
And that brings up another point right here. What's his name here? Brett is wondering about, what about diagnostic tools in terms of repairing wiring harnesses and those types of things. I think we even did one on this.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that already. You're going to want to get. We did a whole segment about electrical repair and diagnosis. So you're going to actually want to go back and check that one out for the full nitty gritty. But I'll give you the Splenda Lite version right now. You're going to want to get WeatherPack connectors and Deutz connectors and those common stuff that you see to be able to do harness repair, because that's GM WeatherPack is on basically every GM vehicle. So having those around is really, really convenient, being able to fix those versus having to order, a pigtail or a harness from the factory. If you have the connector and a little bit of wire, you can repair it right then and there.
And probably one of the best things I ever bought, it was probably about 10 years ago, and I know they still make it, Innovative Products of America. They actually have these little files that are flat for repairing the pins in certain connectors. So you can both use the female and the male.
Yeah, I think there's
round.
like a red, yellow, and green one.
Yep.
I use those all the time too. I love
And
those.
they're great for cleaning up trailer connectors, and they're even better if you have a connector that may be suspect. I think I used it on a wheel speed sensor harness where it got going green crusty on one side.
No, that's, speaking of trailers, like, there's some guys that might go into, over the road trucks and be trailer repair guys. So that's one of the things I actually built was I have out of an old ammo can. It's a trailer light tester. And I have, flat 4, your regular 7 plug, and then your big semi 7-way as well. And I can sit there, plug right into the trailer. I don't need to grab the truck, flip that thing on, and test all my trailer lights and diagnose them.
And that's probably something a fast lane tech will have to do.
Yeah, that's that's perfect. If you're working in the industry, working on semi trailers all the time, or truck regular trailers, like somewhere like a trailer dealership, having a tool like that is indispensable.
Oh, kind of a comment here. It says, torque sticks are fine, but the technician in the shop has to realize, number one, his impact, and number one, the amount of air going to his impact gun.
Yeah, you should always, unless you're doing something real crazy, trying to bust something loose, you should always regulate the air going to your impact. You don't want to put more, there's a sweet spot that they all like. You don't want to put any more unnecessary wear on the thing than you absolutely have to. Because I know guys that wear impacts out constantly, and I'm just like, you will break anything if you use it wrong enough, unfortunately.
Let's talk about other tools. Let's talk about plastic pry bars, stuff to remove trim.
Yeah, a good trim, then there's going to be these little, so we've covered the bones of your toolbox. What's going to fill it in?
Yeah.
But it's everything in between. It's the little stuff. Like kind of Andrew just said, trim, if you're working on cars, you're going to be pulling trim interior panels out all the time. It's going to happen. So investing in a good set of plastic pry bars, trim tools. They actually make special little pliers to pull the little Christmas tree connectors out. I love all that stuff. I use that stuff all the time. And before I was like, I can grab it with my little pocket screwdriver, this kind of deal. Well, when you have to pocket screwdriver 30 of those things out, it gets really old really fast. So having the nice pliers or those little plastic pry bars really makes a difference.
Another thing I cannot stress enough to have inside your toolbox is the picks.
Yes.
If you're a technician doing cartridge oil filters, removing some of those O-rings and some of the other stuff, are on a vehicle to get a hold of something, those picks with the hooks and the different...
Yeah, a good set of picks is very, very indispensable, especially like you said, pulling out O-rings, doing that kind of stuff, setting O-rings in a different spot. they get you out of a lot of hairy situations. You can never find a screwdriver, small enough, and that's why having a dedicated set of picks for a job like that is key. So that's another thing I like. I kind of mentioned earlier, those hose clamp off pliers.
Yeah.
I have metal and plastic ones, all different sizes. I love those. I like to have a couple good tarp straps in my toolbox too, to hang a brake caliper or hang something out of the way. I have a couple little fabric bags as well to throw over cable ends or that kind of deal. The blue painter's tape and the Sharpie for labeling wires, bolts, that kind of stuff is most of the time when I'm in the shop, I actually have like a pocket protector I have in my deal, and there's a couple pens in there, a couple good Sharpies, there's a scribe in there, just miscellaneous things that it's always at your fingertip. You always need a Sharpie at the most inconvenient times.
Question coming in, and this one's kind of interesting. Oil filter wrenches, what should an introductory tech have?
So it kind of just depends what kind of oil filters you're doing. If you're doing cartridge style, you're going to need a, kind of a miscellaneous set. And a lot of those are just regular sockets to pull the cartridge cap off. Some are, tonged a little more specific. But, you can generally get away, I think, with like 3 sizes of those expandable ones. But that might not always do it for you. So I would grab each size of those. Maybe if I know I'm doing fleet maintenance, like I'm doing the same one all the time, get that specific sized oil filter wrench. But they also a bunch of companies make plier style oil filter wrenches, or even the strap style. You can almost do everything with that cheap strap one. The key is with that is the guy before you over tightened it, getting it off with the strap style wrench is going to be a little hard, but we've all been there where we knocked a screwdriver through an oil filter and, peeled it off that way, or we're knocking it off with a chisel.
And you're right, those specialty sockets, you may be at a Ford dealership, you may be at a Chrysler dealership, pay attention to where you're working, but do invest in those ones for the cartridge oil filters, the specialty ones. Like I definitely have a Toyota one in there. It's a 2AG, that oil filter that, it's cartridge, it's underneath. You have that one screw underneath to drain the oil from it and another one to turn it. Those ones are always screwed up. But, there are some specialty sockets like the 27 millimeter that you're going to find on a lot of Chrysler products, like the 2 liter, the 1.4. That has a special socket that has better clearance to get onto there. So invest in those, but it's going to depend on where you're working and what you're going to see. But independent shop,
Yeah, definitely. It just depends what you're working on, but for an independent shop, you can almost get by with just a strap style and a socket set.
We're coming to the last 2 minutes of the webinar, or I'm sorry, the live cast here. I've been doing a lot of webinars lately. And here's a question: what tools are deductible?
So that depends state to state. You can write off, if you're using it to make money and it's investing in your job, if you have a good accountant, technically it's all writable off. It just depends on your certain tax situation, and consult your tax advisor for the exact answer on that question.
Exactly. It is deductible in some ways, but it's going to differ on the forms. And then another thing with the deduction is, that's kind of the nice thing about a tool truck, is they can print out what you bought. And then you could be totally aghast in April saying, I spent how much last year?
Yeah, when you look at your tool receipt and there's a comma in it, it makes you feel bad about yourself. But then you just go buy yourself a pretzel and it's all okay.
Any bit of advice as we're leaving out here?
So my number one piece of advice for any tech, the greatest thing I ever learned was, if you have to borrow it more than twice, then you need to go buy one. And that is stuck actually the first technician job I ever had. This guy, the tech, being young techs, it's good to have old techs in the shop and to kind of take them under their wing. And, I had a guy take me under his wing named Eddie, and that dude taught me so much stuff. And, I would not be the same technician I am today without him. And that was the number one rule he taught me, and I still live by it to this day.
Don't borrow tools, borrow brains.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
So we're just 1 minute before the end of it, and this has been great.
Yeah, no, like I said, I love hanging out with you guys and kind of just talking. This was a great subject for us. we could talk about tools all day long. It's a lot of fun. So until next time, guys. I'm Justin with Summit Racing. We have Andrew Markell here with Tomorrow's Technician, and I'll see you guys later.
And make sure you stop by Summit Racing in their tool section, and also online to see what they have, because they've got a great selection.
Oh yeah. Head over to summitracing.com or one of our 4 retail store locations to check out our full selection of really sweet tools.
Well, thank you very much, instructors and students. We'll
See
see you
y'all
next
later.
time.